For Victims and Villains, my name is Josh, and today we are talking about Predator Badlands. Predator Badlands is the latest Predator film from Dan Trachtenberg. That man deserves a medal. How good these movies are getting. We'll talk about it. But it tells the story of a predator outcast that finds himself on a distant planet aiming to reclaim his glory amongst family. As I mentioned, Dan Trachtenberg at this point in the game is to Predator what Dave Filoni is to Star Wars. This man, just give him the keys to the castle because this man clearly knows what he's doing. Up to Prey, a lot of the Predator franchise just kind of felt like it was like hit or miss. You either had nostalgia tied to it from Predators 1 and 2, or it just kind of felt like a mixed bag, whether you were talking about AVP, Predators, or The Predator. It just kind of felt like you either really loved the series or you really hated it, or maybe you overall really just kind of thought it was okay, but there were really things you liked about it, but overall you hated it. And then along comes Dan Trachtenberg. He gives us this masterpiece called Prey, and earlier this year gives us Killer of Killers, and Badlands just kind of keeps in step with both of the quality of those two movies. And this movie is just flat out an incredible movie and surprised me in a multitude of ways. I'm going to talk about the ways that it surprised me most was the use of comedy here. This movie kind of felt almost James Gunn-like, kind of like channeling in that humor from like Superman or Guardians of the Galaxy. I was really surprised by how comedy landed here. Now, sometimes it didn't land, and that is just my opinion. It's very subjective. I really think some of the stuff with Elle Fanning's Thea didn't necessarily land the way that it had intended to, but the way that there's this almost lighthearted, whimsical nature to the first couple acts of this movie, you can definitely tell that that was the intention they were going for. And once the film kind of hits its second act, that is when I feel like the film's comedy really found its footing. It definitely feels like it takes some time to find its ground. I was also very surprised by the heart of this movie. Like, this movie surprised me in ways that I was not expecting to be surprised by, and it was very rare coming out of this film thinking that I would do this review comparing it to the heart and themes of The Wild Robot from last year. Yes, you heard that right. I am comparing this movie to The Wild Robot from last year because it is on par with that same heart and that same feel and even some of the same themes as well. But fear not, this movie does have plenty of gore. This movie definitely does have plenty of the violence that Predator franchise is known for. Trachtenberg really does know how to juggle all of those things really well. Badlands is just another proof of that. Elle Fanning in this movie, absolutely fantastic. Tour de force, dual performance in this movie. I really loved like I said, when I say whimsical, it's definitely a lot more of that comes from her Thea character. Beautiful. Just absolutely, just the amount of range that she shows between these two characters is incredible. So you have Thea, who is kind of the whimsical's comic sidekick, but then you also have Tessa. Tessa definitely is the antagonist of this movie. I really loved her performance in this movie as Tessa as well. She definitely has a menacing side to her that I don't think I've ever seen from Elle Fanning. But then again, this is the first movie in a long time I've seen Elle Fanning in, and she just did an absolutely exceptional job, and I really loved her in this movie. I had to pull out IMDb for this next one because I wanted to make sure I got it right. I know I'm probably going to still end up messing it up, but Dimitrius Schuster-Koloamatangi. I think I said that right. I probably pronounced that so wrong, but he plays Dak in this movie, and Dak is our anchor throughout the course of this movie. He's our protagonist, and just the amount of he crushes it in this movie. The amount of emotion and the body language is just absolutely incredible. Like, at this point, I also think that's a mixture of the actor's performance, but also the writing as well, and just the direction from Trachtenberg, because I feel like we hadn't really kind of seen any real emotion from these characters. Didn't know that was possible, but I think the way that he's written and the way that he's performed is just absolutely, absolutely incredible. And it's just a tour de force, 100%. Pacing of this movie is impeccable. I loved the pacing of this movie. I thought it was very well done. There was never one part of this film that felt like it was dragging. Everything that felt like, even if it didn't feel like it was unintentional, like there are some exploration elements in first two acts of this film, they come in really smart and really handy. And the climax of this movie, I was very impressed by how everything was very intentional. I think my biggest complaints about this movie is I look at how good Dak looks as a character and how a lot of this world CGI monsters kind of look. They look really incredible, but there are these like little nuggets of moments where you just kind of come across really bad CGI and it's really painfully noticeable. And I really, really hate that. This movie makes me excited for the possibility of a third AVP. I thought they did a really good job at kind of balancing both the elements of the Predator franchise alongside the Wayland Eutonics elements as well from Alien. I thought that it never felt like it was favoring one franchise over another, but it kind of definitely felt like balanced, definitely the way that you would want it to do. And I would kind of almost compare it to all of the superheroes and all of the Easter eggs that we got this past summer and Superman. With that said, I'm ready to run this one through our Rorschach rating scale. I'm going to go ahead and give Predator Badlands a 4 out of 5. Overall, I think this is one of the strongest entries into this franchise that we have gotten yet. I really, really loved and had a blast with this movie. This movie made me laugh way more than I thought it would. Also drew a lot more emotion out of me than I thought it was. Again, I know I'm crazy by saying this, but there's just wild robot vibes in the third act of this movie. I'm not going to explain why. Go see it. But also the performances across the board, super solid. Action, violence, the gore, all hits. And this is just a fun time. Dan Trachtenberg, keep bringing them. They're great. Now we're going to talk about mental health. And if you guys are new to our content here at Victims and Villains, Mental Health Moment is where we will take a theme out of each film which we're reviewing, talk about it for a few moments in the hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. There comes a point in this movie where Elle Fanning's character, Thea, is talking with Dak, our protagonist, and she kind of calls him out and says, like, hey, you're grieving, and that's okay. And he looks at her, and his response is 3 words: grieving is weakness. And I think a lot of times that's how we handle mental health. I think we handle it in a way that really undersells our nature to be okay, because we think it's not okay to be okay, because that's what we've been taught for so long. And in essence, what ultimately ends up happening is we get into these bad cycles and these bad practices of bad mental health, where we think no one can know or no one's going to understand. And that's just not true. When we look at the rate of depression in the United States, it's over 17 million Americans. I mean, there are so many people that struggle with anxiety, and not to mention that there were 12.3 million people that thought about suicide in 2023, and out of those 3.1 million people made a plan for suicide. So these are numbers that tell us that you're not alone. And on the flip side of that, when you hone in solely on grief as what she's saying, it actually, in my opinion, it takes real strength and real courage to display and be vulnerable enough to let others in to see your grief and to understand it. It's okay to not be okay. So if you or someone you know is struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, depression, you can click those links in our show notes below to check out our mental health resource library. Predator Badlands opens up November 7th, this upcoming Friday. In the show notes below, you guys will find that mental health resource library along with our links to our podcast and more movie reviews like this, social media, ways to support us, and that follow button. So until next time, remember to keep it spooky, keep it classy.